Welcome, everyone, to this explainer on the For the Wise podcast. I am so glad you're here. Go ahead, grab a warm drink, settle in, and get comfortable. We're really getting into some late-night, deep thought territory today. Oh, and real quick before we begin, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future deep dives. All right, let's dive right into this incredibly fascinating topic, the architecture of incompatible truths.
So why does some arguments just never end? We've all been there, right? You're in an argument and it just loops, over and over. It is universally exhausting. I mean, just look at our little mascot Hakeem the owl over there, perched on that frayed burlap branch. He is looking exactly as exasperated as you probably feel when you're stuck in one of these debates. You lay out the facts and they just brush him off. You make a totally logical point, and they answer with something that feels completely unrelated. It's literally like talking to a brick wall. But what if I told you that you aren't actually arguing about what you think you're arguing about?
What's actually going on right beneath the surface is epistemological misalignment. Now look, I know that's a super fancy philosophical term, but let's just break it down into plain English. It simply means that two people are not playing the same game of what counts as knowing. This is that quiet, totally hidden mismatch beneath all those impossible arguments. You think you're discussing facts, but they actually think you're discussing loyalty.
Which brings us to Section 1, Clashing Operating Systems, the Hidden Machinery of Conflict.
Man, it is just sheer exhaustion, isn't it? Pouring your sanity, your time, and your energy into a conversation that was never actually about the topic at hand. You are quite literally trying to run Mac software on a Windows computer. You're dealing with entirely incompatible operating systems of reality. I mean, look at Hakeem's little button eyes shifting into wide-eyed worry right now. And for good reason, because on one side, you've got someone who believes truth comes from evidence. For them, doubt is healthy. It's literally how you learn. But on the exact opposite side, you have someone who believes truth comes from authority. For them, doubt isn't healthy at all. It's a betrayal. So when these two systems collide, a scientist and a conspiracy theorist aren't actually disagreeing about data. A traditionalist and a critical thinker aren't fighting about the details. They are wrestling over who gets to decide what is true enough.
Absolutely love this quote. Trying to solve it with more arguments is like trying to fix a broken map by walking faster. It's totally absurd, right? But it's exactly what we do. We try to explain our way out of it. But no amount of explaining fixes a clash about the actual rules of explanation itself. If your map is fundamentally broken, sprinting is definitely not going to get you to your destination.
When you finally see this mismatch for what it is, the whole thing stops feeling like a debate. It starts looking exactly like two radio stations transmitting on completely different frequencies, while both sides angrily insist the other is just not listening. You wouldn't try to fix a fuzzy radio station by shouting louder into the speaker, would you? Obviously not. But that is exactly what we're doing in these mismatched arguments.
Welcome to Epistemic Quicksand. You know you're in it when every single piece of evidence you offer up is treated as a threat rather than a helpful update. In this quicksand, saying "I don't know yet" is viewed as this massive weakness rather than a totally honest inquiry. You're talking to someone whose entire truth infrastructure runs on absolute certainty. And the harder you struggle with logic, the faster you sink.
Moving on to Section 2, the reality mismatch, when intimacy magnifies the cracks.
This is where we really need to shift into a more intimate space. Because as frustrating as this is with a complete stranger on the internet, it hits our personal relationships the absolute hardest. In a mismatched relationship, one partner treats conversation as an exploration. They use language to clarify things, firmly believing that problems shrink when you examine them. But the other partner? They treat conversation as a defense mechanism. They use language to secure their territory, because they believe the problems only grow when you name them out loud.
Let's just let this one breathe for a second. You can share a home, a bed, a life, but you can't share a reality. Wow, that is a heavy, heavy realization. It creates this profound emotional loneliness. It's almost like a kind of spiritual frostbite. It's that creeping sense that you are unheard, not because you aren't speaking clearly, but because your partner's way of knowing literally cannot absorb your experience.
And that leads directly into this brutal loop of mutual misunderstanding. Now, this isn't happening because either person is being intentionally cruel. It's happening because their sense-making engines are interpreting the exact same reality in totally fundamentally incompatible ways. Both people walk away absolutely convinced the other is being evasive or attacking them. Each thinks they are responding to reality, and each thinks the other is actively rewriting it.
All right, Section 3, the dialogue trap, when talking makes it worse.
Now, we are going to challenge a deeply romanticized societal assumption here. The idea that if we just sit down and talk, we can fix anything. Look, without compatible currencies of truth, dialogue just becomes a polite torture chamber. Talking across different epistemic worlds feels like trying to stitch two completely different dimensions together using dental floss. Both sides just end up getting shredded. The silent assumption that talking is always a good thing, it's actually a trap.
And this brings us straight to weaponized reconciliation. Think about all these lovely little slogans we hear. Just talk it out, be the bigger person, communicate more. Society throws these at us constantly, right? But here's the thing, communication is not a universal solvent. It really only works when both people treat reality, honesty, and self-reflection in roughly compatible ways. If they don't, these slogans just weaponize the whole process against the person who is desperately trying to find some shared ground.
So the big takeaway here is that you don't actually have a communication problem, you have a world-building problem. Epistemic alignment isn't about agreeing on everything. I mean, you can still have wildly different opinions, but you absolutely must share a basic grammar of reality. Without that, you are basically just pouring your love and your energy into a conceptual black hole.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, Spotting the Misalignment, Protecting Your Psychological Oxygen. Honestly, it's time to just relax a bit, kind of like Hakeem over there, settling nice and cozy into his little nest, because there actually is a hopeful, practical way to navigate all of this.
The most constructive move you can make, especially if you want to avoid accidentally lighting the relationship on fire, is to gently surface that friction. You ask this very specific question: what do you consider a legitimate way of knowing? This is the ultimate move, guys. It takes all that invisible friction and finally makes it visible. Conversations get so much calmer once you realize the disagreement isn't actually about the specific conclusion, but about the architecture of how that conclusion was formed in the first place.
So, here is a really gentle diagnostic checklist you can use. Just ask yourself, do they update their views when the facts change? Do they actively distinguish facts from feelings? Is uncertainty a threat to them, or is it a bit of breathing room? Can they hold two opposing ideas in their head at the same time without combusting? Remember, we're not testing intelligence here. These are just humane, practical ways to check your alignment early on without getting overly paranoid about it.
Think of these questions as your emotional hazard lights. Catching this mismatch early, like really noticing when the facts change but the person doesn't, it is not cold. It's not cynical at all. It is absolutely vital self-preservation. Recognizing this truth frees you. It stops that slow, agonizing psychological erosion where you start questioning your own clarity just because someone else's framework is built entirely on fog. It finally frees you to invest your precious energy where curiosity actually has some room to breathe. I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought today. Are you trapped with someone living a story while you live a universe? Let that marinate for a bit. Check your alignment early, do it gently, and always protect your psychological oxygen. Thank you so much for joining me for this late-night explainer on the For the Wise podcast. I really hope this gave you some valuable tools for your own relationships. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more deep dives. Until next time, stay wise and take care of your reality.